I have 7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Dreer?
Present.
Counselor Irvin?
Here.
Counselor Fleck?
Here.
Counselor Maraday?
Here.
Counselor Savage?
Here.
Counselor Stennett?
Here.
Mayor Soulsby?
Here. All right. So everyone knows what today is. I'm going to have you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
"22 years ago today, anyone that is old enough can remember exactly where they were. The city of Cottage Grove and all of council would like to remember all the families, all the people, all the first responders that lost their lives on 9/11 in the Twin Towers, on the planes, and on the ground. All of our hearts break for everyone that still struggles with the loss of a family member or a friend. I personally had a client that was only 22 years old. She was dating someone in New York and was scheduled to fly out on September 12th and decided to surprise him and come a day early. She lost her life that day on one of the airplanes that hit the tower. I myself will never forget her or any of the people that has suffered every day since. Can I please have you all rise for a moment of silence in remembrance and bow your heads? Thank you. You may be seated. Item 4, swearing in of our police chief, Mr. Corey Chase.
Mayor, Council, we'd like to call Corey up here. And first, if you would raise your arm and repeat after me. I, and state your name.
I, Corey Chase,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and abide by the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support and abide by the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will support, abide by, and enforce the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon. and that I will support, abide by, and enforce the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the rules and regulations of the Cottage Grove Police Department.
and the rules and regulations of the Cottage Grove Police Department.
And I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties of police officer during my continuance therein. To the best of my ability, so help me God.
To the best of my ability, so help me God.
If you would sign this. And then do- Now what we're doing here is this is the Criminal Justice Code of Ethics, and I'd like you to read that out loud. If you want to step to the microphone and read that.
So this is the Criminal Justice Code of Ethics. This is something that's presented to all law enforcement in the state of Oregon. As a criminal justice officer, my fundamental duty is to serve humankind, to safeguard lives and property, to protect all persons against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder, and to respect the constitutional rights of all people to liberty, equality, and justice. I will keep my private life unsullied as an example to all, maintain courageous calm in the face of danger, scorn, or ridicule, develop self-restraint, and be constantly mindful of the welfare of others. Honest in thought and deed in both my personal and official life. I will be exemplary in obeying the laws of the land and the regulations of my department. Whatever I see or hear of a confidential nature or that is confided to me in my official capacity will be kept ever secret unless revelation is necessary in the performance of my duty. I will never act officiously or permit personal feelings, prejudices, animosities, or friendships to influence my decisions. Without compromise and with relentlessness, I will uphold the laws affecting the duties of my profession courteously and appropriately, without fear or favor, malice or ill will, never employing unnecessary force or violence, and never accepting gratuities. I recognize my position as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it as a public trust to be held so long as I am true to the ethics of the criminal justice system. I will constantly strive to achieve these objectives and ideals, dedicating myself before God to my chosen profession.
Welcome, Chief Chase.
Thank you.
Congratulations, and if you'd like to have your wife.
Absolutely.
So, Mayor, Council, and the citizens of Cottage Grove, I just wanted to say thank you for this tremendous opportunity. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to be in Cottage Grove. It's a wonderful community. I've had a very, very busy first day, but it's been a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed getting to meet all of the folks around the department and around town. I've already introduced myself to several people. So this is a wonderful community, and the men and women in this police department who are here doing this job are incredible humans. They're here working really hard. They're serving, with all their heart, and they're doing the hard work of being in this profession right now. So I'm proud to be here. I'm honored to be the chief of police, and I just want to thank all of you for trusting me with this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. Items to be added to the agenda? I see none. Appearance of interested citizens for items not on the agenda. This is a time for citizen comment on items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer, provide their name and address, and will be allowed up to 5 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for a public hearing may be provided only at that hearing. Comments on the agenda items may be taken prior to the council discussion on that item. The council will not engage in any discussion or make any decisions based on public comment at this time. However, the council may take comment under advisement for discussion and action at a further council meeting. Is Jeremy Lucier here? Okay. Jason Brantley?
Good evening. I reside at the homeless camp behind Dairy Mart, and I just came tonight to say that a lot of us inside of the camp agree with the city about how poorly things have been handled there. And there are those of us that want to turn it around, and we've taken it upon ourselves to find our own structure from within so that we can create some sort of, rule for people to follow. And I think the main thing that we want to iterate is that cleanliness and such is a big priority of ours, and we hope to turn things around. Thank you.
Thank you. Venice Mason.
My name is Venice Mason, and I live at 28 South 6th Street, Unit 3 in the old City Hall building. First, let me say that I'm absolutely thrilled to see many members of the caring community here and participating in democracy, folks who live in different circumstances than maybe other people do here. I came to speak this evening. The City Council has two pieces of paper in front of them. One is Caring Community Brings Critical Supplies to Help the Homeless. And I'd like to share it with everyone else in the room, if I may. It says that weaving a social safety net is vital to meeting the needs of those experiencing homelessness in our community. Sourcing, mobilizing, storing, and distributing needed gear to our neighbors in need requires a coordinated effort. This week, much-needed tents, bedrolls, hygiene supplies, food, and water were brought to Cottage Grove by Pastor Zane Ridings of First Christian Church in Eugene. A stockpile of supplies for homeless people donated to his church was shared freely here, continuing a relationship that helped supply our houseless community heavily over the last year. With the change of seasons, it will be critical to keep gear coming to those facing the elements without adequate housing. Rooting Out Hunger, a grassroots organization started by me, coordinated a meet and greet at the community center with local leaders and representatives of the homeless community to decide how supplies should be shared locally. Representatives of Community Sharing, the Cottage Grove Community Center, First Presbyterian Church Earth and Social Justice Committee, Rooting Out Hunger, and the local overflow homeless camps decided to stock both Community Sharing, the Community Center Supplies Closet, and the Douglas Street Overflow Camp. Through this networking, a critical supply chain was solidified, helping our community access the resources of the larger Lane County area and enhancing the lives of our neighbors in need. Following the supply distribution, Pastor Zane toured the Community Sharing Educational Garden, another project of Rooting Out Hunger, and many of the people who are here behind me. The garden supplies much-needed produce to the local food bank and is lovingly tended by the local homeless population in partnership with volunteers. It was a joy to see such a caring community working together to make Cottage Grove a better place for those who are in need to be. I'm pretty determined to stay positive because I've learned some lessons in this community as well. And it's really important that we focus and celebrate on the small things, people who are still here, people who had no hope participating in our democracy, the wins. Because the work out here, and I don't know who I'm quoting, but he was much wiser than me, this is about planting seeds, planting seeds for trees, the shade of which we will never see. It will take generations to fix the problems that we are now enduring in our society, because this is the net result of an oppressive system and the fall of capitalism, as inflation doesn't cover the things we need. So it may be stopping up in the higher echelons of the 1%, but the rest of us are trying to feed our families, trying to get enough gasoline, and trying as hard as we can to pay the energy bills, things that a caring community sees to for those in need. It's been an honor to work here in Cottage Grove. I'm moving on to programs that will be replicated like the one that I've built here in small rural communities. And I'm choosing ones without police departments or city councils, no offense. But this is too much structure for me. I'm more of a hands-on action kind of gal. And the last thing that I would like to share with you is from a letter of support for me. And it's not about me, although it was very humbling to read such nice things. But I wanted to share what Gail from the Book Mine said when she was talking about the programs that we built, where homeless people helped us to grow food, to give to people who were suffering here in Cottage Grove, and to feed themselves and their families. And what she said is that she was touched to have some of these new gardeners sweep and weed the sidewalks around her store as a way of thanking her for the food and the plants that she had been donating. That's the important piece, because everybody in the picture that I gave to you that hopefully will make the paper, they're either paid to be there or they're a member of a professional community that does these things. But these are our business people. These are our Main Street business people who are talking about their lives being improved, being thanked, and being welcoming. No matter what else is happening in our community, don't believe the hype, because Cottage Grove is not a hateful place to be. It's not a place that has to be divided. It's the place where our children play in the river, we make friends on the street, and we learn our lessons here. But for me, I've learned mine, and I am looking forward to living in a community that is more accepting of people like me.
Shannon Croy. Did I get your name wrong?
My name is Shannon Troy Simmons, and I'm living at the homeless camp behind Dairy Mart, and I've been there since the day that it opened. And we're facing a lot of problems. Everybody faces problems. And one of our problems is that we keep getting people down there that need psychiatric help. Psychiatric. And they need that because we got to spend all our time helping them when they should be psychiatric care. And they're not. We got to spend our time with them instead of out doing work and useful things. And I hear that we get blamed for stealing stuff and trashing things. I don't think so. I want to see those statistics because I'll tell you what, everybody I know that's homeless picks up in the parks and picks up trash that they don't put down. And I'd like to see that. I dare anybody to come out and prove the statistics.
Jacob Cook. I'm sorry? Okay. Andrew. It's fine.
She very well, so I wanted her to be able to correct my speech if it wasn't good. I'm going to go with what I feel drawn to answer the call to duty of solving the problem of homelessness and to help end the war on the homeless. I've thought long and hard on how to take a non-traditional approach to this issue, also how to cut out many of the extra steps in the equation. So here are a few ideas I have come up with. First, we must change how people view ourselves. Homeless population, we don't even have an accurate count, do we? If they do, we don't. If we do, they don't. Who are we? Are we all one or are we different people? It would be nice to have the information that the places in town have on us. That way we can work with what is already known. First, we must change how people view us. Homeless people are people too. We must ingrain into our minds and their minds that we are people too. We are just struggling with more or harder issues. Almost each and every one of us, the homeless citizens, are suffering from mental or physical disability, or both, or the tragedy of death that has stricken some of us, like my ex-girlfriend. Everybody in her life just keeps dying and dying and dying, and we don't even know if foul play was involved or not. So some of them have severe drug addictions too, along with poverty and so on. I personally have discovered in my time socializing at least 4 different camps. 2 of them I won't mention at this point. But the Derry Martin Douglas camps, that I perhaps may be the only one with a therapist, or counselor I should say, or receiving any help for my mental, issues and my own diagnosis. And not to mention, there's a lot of homeless veterans that are dealing with PTSD. Now, that doesn't make me better than the others like me, but it does put me in the front of the pack, so to speak, because receiving one service or another opens doors to other very valuable services. So gaining more willing volunteers to assist those who struggle to deal with finding and signing up for the help they need would be extremely valuable to this process, specifically because I'll tell you from personal experiences, people are afraid of everything. They're afraid of cops. They're afraid of criminals. They're afraid of friends and family. They're afraid of employees in a store. They're afraid of signing up to get clean needles. They don't want to put their name or information on there. They're afraid to do anything that could better themselves on the way of having addiction because they're afraid of going to jail. In my eyes, it is easy to help one individual with their needs and problems, but all homelessness seems like a big and overwhelming task, right? Many of the homeless have similar needs, and there are a vast majority that are easy and simple to resolve. If you look at it that way, you feel more hopeful. The second thing we need is to stop segregating people by category or any other type of judgment. This world has always separated people into classes of a kind, like the young, the old, the rich, and the poor. In school, it was like this. We had the nerds, the jocks, the stoners, and then there was the bullies and the bully beaters. Unfortunately, like me, but not because I chose to beat them, because one bully after another has approached me ever since I moved here and decided to just punch me in the face one day. Well, the last time it happened, it was my father. And it wasn't very fun spending 30 days in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day and not knowing why your whole entire family's lied on a police report and suddenly you're in a jail and they've taken your gun rights and all your other rights and you come home and you can't go home because your home's not there anymore. They've taken all your things. They've taken your right to talk to your family for 2 years. I ended up 20 years to the day they let me out of Blaine County Jail right in front of the Thurston High School where the shooting happened.
Are you almost done?
I would like another 5 minutes. Could I go
Oh,
again?
You can't
the
do
end?
another 5 minutes, but
Can I
if you
speak
wrap it
for
up,
Jacob?
I can't do another 5, but if you can wrap it up quickly.
Well, I just want to say this. I'm going to go to the end of what's in my head. I think that we should turn these homeless camps into solar parks, and we should contact Elon Musk and see what he thinks about starting a revolution. I mean, I want world peace. I want happiness for everyone, and the success we all seek, I think, is that peace. Otherwise, we should find out who is not in that like and remove them from our pathway. Thank you for listening. We're all family here. There's but one family under the stars and moon.
Thank you. Michael Bork.
My name is Mike Fork. I live at 310 North Douglas. Had a lot of good conversation tonight, and I've had a lot of good conversations the last few days. I'm not a proponent of unhoused. What I want to do is, we have been a poorly managed city for the unhoused.
Hold on one second. Can you guys please keep it down so we can hear? Thank you.
Poorly managed city for the unhoused. We came into this with open arms, with no plan, and just open tents and open places. And that has shown quite significantly out there in most of the camps that we have. And I've gone around to a lot of other cities and looked, and I was going to bring pictures, but I couldn't get them uploaded to do it without tech support and all that. So, but what I wanted to do is just, we need to have a plan, and I think we're coming up with it. Dana and I have spoken a few times about getting the key proponents and taking a look at how we can best help our unhoused here. We can't bring everybody in. We have to have a number that we can actually manage and get to a point where they can get better. Bringing them all in just makes it worse. What we need to do is have whatever number that is that we can agree upon, is to go from there so we have services for these unhoused, so they can get to where they can actually get to a house or a job. And we really need to have a progressive step and help them. And that's really what my whole angst has been since day one, is we've been told over and over again that, oh, we're going to do this, and then they do something totally different. But there, they said, one, no water at Douglas Camp. Well, August they put water in. They were only going to be temporary there. It's permanent there. So the people out there, the residents of this community, do not trust our city management right now, because they've been lied to over and over again through this process. And they're quite fed up with it. Most of them do not feel safe, and that's because they've had either instances at their own homes or with other people. And but again, what I want to do is really strive so we can come to agreement on what is the best tactic. We need to have every single party involved and come up with an agreement and go from there. Because without it, we're just fighting each other, and that's not in the best interest of the city, the residents here, or the unhoused that live here, that inhabit this town. And all we want is a better place for everybody to live and be able to not worry about having your kids out in the yard, or what kids on the school bus are going to see when they go by on their way to school. So what I really hope that we, towards the end of this meeting, hopefully you guys can come up with a plan. Dana and I've sort of talked about it, where we can come to agreement and get the right parties together so we can move forward and get this crisis that we have in this town to where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan High.
Hello, everyone, fellow city members, residents, neighbors, city council. I'm actually from the North Douglas camp myself, and I came here under the pretense to talk about some issues revolving around theft locally. Specifically, we would like to be able to bring to you the attention of possibly addressing
Ryan,
those who are caught.
can you bring the microphone a little closer?
Yeah, is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So I'm from North Douglas. We're trying to bring the attention to you guys to maybe give us the ability, or you do the ability for us, to revoke the right of those who are caught stealing, both within the camp and outside of the camp in the local community. Whether they're released or detained at that time is not relevant so much as we would like to mitigate the issue by removing them from said local environments and causing them thus, if released and not detained, to have to move further away from the local area. If they can't be held, it's the only thing that we can do is defer them to somewhere else to where they're not an issue here, and maybe they will be able to be rehabilitated where they can manage themselves to not steal, you know, because one can only help themselves if they want to, and if they don't want to, they're only destroying their own and others. Outside of that, we have an orchard that we've been maintaining at the Douglas site camp, as well as a garden with a variety of vegetables and fruit even growing that was entirely managed by our camp itself. The garden was actually built by our own members, bringing in recycled supplies of wood, you know, to build the garden beds, for instance, and dirt that was purchased, and plant seeds that we started from seeds. The entire process was managed at our camp. We mowed the lawn there even. When you guys had it mowed the first time, they actually ran over a bunch of blueberry plants and all sorts of various fruit bushes, which was a waste because blueberries take 2 years to even produce anything. So that's a long time before they produce. So a lot of time wasted and food wasted that we wouldn't have to worry about. I know it doesn't seem like much maybe in some people's eyes, but it makes all the difference to even have a couple berries a day when you have nothing, because not everyone has something, you know. And anyone can end up here. Doesn't matter what walk of life one walks, because I had 3 jobs at one point and a home of my own, and I'm not in any of that situation now, just because of increase of costs to housing specifically is why I did not have a house any longer. And lack of roommates to take the place of said budget when there is not enough income on a low-income job on your own to sustain most income required for housing, such as $1,200 a month. If you have anything like child support owed, you probably don't make that after a month of work, on minimum wage, if only anything but more than overtime. And I know that from experience. So with that in mind, there are a lot of people that have issues in the camps that are psychiatric, and some with physical even. And there are those who are trying to better those ailments, you know. Some of them go to counseling and some of them have jobs even. But others, they manage the gardens or the orchard, prune trees, pick up fruit off the ground so it's not all rotting there and fermenting in the yard. Said things like that, or some of the rehabilitation processing things that they would use in a rehab facility as well. And we are already able to implement it on our own here in camp. So that's just something. The last issue that I'd really like to address is our neighboring community members who are aggressive and abusive, to say the least, in the words defined as modern day abuse. And that is neighbors who go out of their way to verbally abuse us while they're driving away, and back up even to repeat it again when we ask why they would say that. We're not trying to be violent with them or aggressive even. We're just wanting to understand why they want to yell profanities at us. And instead, they continue to do so. They continue to harass us even. And some of them go out of their way to try and get our vehicles towed or moved at any cost, even when we would move it if they just asked, even if it wasn't in their way. So with that in mind, there is a lot more than just that from the community that we deal with on a day-to-day basis as a camp and as a tribe or a family, because to come together in the community is hard for an individual as someone new to the community and as a group, even if they are new to the area. And it's hard for new people to be accepted into old communities. I've lived here for a number of years, since 2011 specifically. I've been in and out of the area, majority of that time being here, housed and unhoused. And the community's acceptance is really a revolving thing for both the Douglas camp and the Dairy Mart camp, because without integration successfully and acceptance, there will never be truly an integrated community of, rehab facility type healing. So, anyways, time's up. Thanks.
Thank you. TJ Kite?
Hi, I'm TJ. I'm also at the North Douglas camp, and I'm also here to kind of speak about the same things that Ryan spoke of. There is a lot of our fellow neighbors that fail to even ask a question and misunderstand a lot of us at these camps that are not bad people. We're good people. I moved to Cottage Grove to escape a very abusive man who tried to murder me, and they have no idea that there's the good people in there as well as the ones that we would also like not to live in these camps with us due to the same type of issues that you guys complain about. I also cannot disagree with the angry community about, the codes, the ordinances that aren't being met. I have been trying to bring that to the camp's attention. I have been working with Dana and Teresa and Jake since November of last year at the other camp where I started to get the barriers lowered so that there could be an understanding that, we shouldn't be too different. I understand we live slightly differently than people in a home, but codes are codes, ordinances are ordinances, and we have to follow them as well. I'm here to propose that I know you've put a lot towards our camps as far as funding and police enforcement time and all of the volunteers, and I thank you all for that. I'm very grateful that I have a place to be. But if there's any way you could find a way to do like a camp host or hosts, somebody who can basically keep these issues that spill out into the community that is a nuisance inside the community, and then can also be taken care of before it becomes that unmanageable issue or the bullying or the other things that go on there without any kind of structure, I guess would be the right way to say that. It's basically also I agree with, we had a petition that we signed to have people removed from these camps that are a problem. They steal, they lie, they generate a lot of garbage, refuse to be civilized, are very aggressive verbally and sometimes physically with the members there. I know you're probably tired of hearing about these camps, probably tired of having to deal with them, and I apologize for all the nuisances, but there are a lot of us in there that just really want to improve the quality of our lives and really want to get to know our neighbors. I personally have gotten to know a few of the neighbors very well, names, and one of them even has a very nice parrot named Earl, who's a boy, or a girl, not a boy, but you can't tell him that. He doesn't like it. We just want to be happy and live and not have people scream at us for no reason and tell us we're bums and use profane language and to get a job and, we're a waste of space or don't belong. Because we do belong. We're people too. So I really do thank you for your time, and I appreciate all that you have done for us. I do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, public hearing. I see none. Consent agenda.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. Resolutions and ordinances. Resolution declaring real property at 79030 Thornton Lane to surplus. Staff report by Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. So back in 2006, the city purchased Millfield Golf Course. Included with the golf course property was the house located at the end of Thornton Lane, which is address 79030 Thornton. It still has a county address, but the property is within the city limits. And staff felt that it might be good to maintain that address while the current renters are in there. They lived there for 12 plus years, and changing it would cause them to have to change all their pertinent information. The house is a 1,250 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. The city has completed a partition separating the house from the golf course, creating a separate 0.3 acre parcel with the house tax lot 2003-2240-0014. The property was rezoned from Parks and Open Space to Residential 1 on July 10th, 2023. Now that the land use has been completed, staff is recommending that City Council declare the property surplus in order to sell the property. Selling the parcel would pay off the approximate $107,475.68 loan on the property. This will also reduce the debt service in the wastewater fund and eliminate staff time needed to maintain and manage the route. If council approves, staff would have the property appraised. That would be the next step. And then we would work with legal counsel on an acceptable process to sell the property. If we were to proceed with selling the property, we will be under our process. We will be bringing to the council a proposed offer. We will have to have a public hearing, and then council will consider that offer. So the recommendation to City Council is to approve the resolution declaring the property at 79030 Thornton Lane surplus and direct staff to have the property appraised and offered for sale, and authorize the city manager to issue and sign all such documents needed to list the property for sale. In my research, the next step of getting an appraisal will cost somewhere between $650 to $800. I would also mention that I was able to speak to the renters that are currently in there today, and they fully understand the process of what the steps are, and I'm sure that it's not a quick process. And most likely they wouldn't be looking at a potential sale. They'll probably have to pursue it.
Do we have a resolution number, Ms. Roberts?
2113.
Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that the City Council approve Resolution 2113, declaring the property at 79030 Thornton Lane, tax lot 20-03-22-40-00104, surplus, and direct staff to have the property appraised and offered for sale, and authorize the city manager to issue and sign all such documents needed to list the property for sale.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Dreer?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Irvin?
Aye.
Counselor Merriday?
Aye.
Counselor Stennett?
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby?
Aye. Motion carries. Item B, second vote on ordinance number 3175, amending section 2.56.030, appointed council's fee to the Cottage Grove Municipal Code. Staff report by Mr. Myers.
This is the second vote on the ordinance that was first read on August 14th at the council meeting. This is to increase the appointed legal counsel's fee to $75 an hour, with a $750 max for cases that are resolved without a trial and a $1,500 amount for cases resolved after trial. This is based on the judge and the court clerk's review of our current ordinance, and they're recommending approval of it.
Councilor Fleck.
Move that the City Council adopt ordinance number 3175.
Second.
We've got a motion with a second. Any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Merriday?
Aye.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Stennett?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Dreer?
Aye.
Counselor Irvin?
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby?
Aye. Motion carries. Business from the City Council. Item A, personal service agreement for city manager recruitment service. Staff report by the city manager.
So you have before you a personal service agreement that has been prepared by the city attorney and in consultation with GMP consultants. This is basically taking our regular personal services agreement and mashing it in with the scope of work and the proposal from GMP. It's for your review and approval. There are a couple of things that I just wanted to point out in the agreement. One, in the proposal, the alternative or the extra expenses, publications, different job boards and things like that, was listed at various amounts. We have put in here in 3.1 $6,000 right now, so that you don't have to come back each not to exceed amount of, in 3.2 I mean, for expenses, not to exceed amount there, so that you don't have to keep coming back to do this publication or to do this publishing. And if you do need to go more than that, then you would have to come back as a council and make an amendment to the agreement. In there in 3.1 is the 18.5, which is the base amount for the regular consultant fees. One thing that does need to be added, so in the motion, if you do choose to approve this, under our section 11, we need to know a name and title for the person that would be the regular contact with GMP for the purposes of preparing and doing postage and contacting people and things like that. We're recommending that that be the city recorder, Mindy Roberts. And that's it.
Any discussion? Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. So at the risk of showing my ignorance here, in Exhibit C, Section 1 reads, consultant shall pay promptly as due all persons supplying labor or materials for the prosecution of the work provided for in the contract. And I looked it up because that's not that I understand the word prosecution. I'm just wondering, is that correct?
It's just statutory language. So 279B is a statute that says for any goods and service contracts, including personal service contracts, you're going to have these provisions in there. And you will have those provisions in there. You don't get to mess with them. You don't get to change it. It's just state this in your contract. So that's the language there. And the purpose of it is to ensure that the city doesn't incur any liens for unpaid workers or materials that are used in service of this contract. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Well, all the stuff you said makes sense. I just don't know how I'm going to prosecute my work tomorrow. But I'll try. So I guess I would, if there's not going to be a discussion, I'd make a motion, or there can be discussion. So move that the council approve the personal services agreement for city manager recruitment services with GMP consultants for professional fees not to exceed $18,500 plus expenses not to exceed $6,000, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Second.
And item friendly amendment to add to section 11 as Mindy Roberts as our city recorder as the point of contact for the city.
Accept that amendment.
Yeah, so the second.
We have a motion with a second. Will the recorder please, are all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, you'll notice that item B is city manager recruitment kickoff meeting, and we've decided to move that to the end. We are going to be going into an executive session in a bit, and we want to invite the audience, whoever's interested, to come back and hear that kickoff recruitment discussion. You're welcome to wait and come back. Item C, concerns from council. Business from the city manager. Report from the city manager.
We can skip first. Do you have any concerns from the council?
Do you have any concerns from the council? Councilor Meredith.
Thank you. As you notice, we had some guests from our two campsites. I knew that things weren't going well there, so I kind of I dropped the ball about going by and checking, so I started to go back and see, what is happening in our camps. And I met an individual that challenged me. He goes, "Oh, you're a city councilor, huh? Bet you wouldn't spend the night here." I said, "Are you inviting me?" He goes, "Maybe." So I went home and got my bedroll, spent the night there. And it's so not to discriminate, the next night I went to the Douglas camp. And I found myself treated with respect. I never feared. I felt perfectly safe. I got to hear a lot of stories as people unburdened and shared how they got here or just what they felt like talking to. A young man was at a crisis in his own family life where he was not able to live at home because of conflicts with his parents. He's working at a local restaurant, but he doesn't have a place to stay constantly. Sometimes he can stay with his girlfriend's family. Sometimes he's got to be close to work so he can get to work. So just having somebody there that like he could talk to as a parent, we had quite a long discussion. So I committed to one night a week to spend at each camp, and I've been maintaining that schedule. Tomorrow I will again take up residence in one of the camps, and I'm learning, and I'm happy to see people are starting to realize we need to manage this. Yes, we know the town is not happy with us, but we are people. We are people, and I'm very looking forward to having a community conversation where we really sit down and talk about our unhoused, and that's what I've reached out to Community Strong. I've reached out to Save the Grove. I've reached out to the unhoused community, and I want to propose tonight that we bring the stakeholders together so we can decide on a process that we can agree to, so that we're not just sitting there yelling at each other or having to listen to the same diatribe each time. We all know how that will go. So what can we do to get together to really talk and decide what we can do together? And so tonight I would propose that at least these stakeholders be invited, Save the Grove, Our Lady of Perpetual Health Outreach, Community Strong, Cottage Grove Police Department, and members of the City Council that have interest in forming a stakeholders group to help plan and select a process that we can have a real community conversation and possibly agree on a moderator or how to proceed, and most importantly, a date and a place. So I would like to put that out to the council, how to proceed.
Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. I would add agreement to that and look forward to that conversation. I would also like to see every church in Cottage Grove, the leadership invited to that, to make sure that there's full awareness of the situation and the responsibilities they're in. In addition to that, so I guess I'll just say another piece, but I would welcome, if we can get something on the calendar or some more discussion on that. But just want to note that want to welcome anybody, especially if you have kids that are of shovel wielding age and strength, to come join Friends of the Cottage Grove Skate Park at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, convening at Pinocchio's Pizza parking lot, where we'll distribute some tools and things to get started on beautifying, at least to start with, the stretch of sidewalk from Gateway to Taylor, or from Main Street to Taylor on Gateway, as just an effort to show that we care about this town, we care about how it looks. We think that as take more pride in ownership, that a lot of good things can happen and that spreads. So we want to invite anybody that can join for that out there, and include this town's youth as much as possible in that. So say try to bring your own gloves. If you have reflective vests, bring those, but we'll have other equipment, and want to thank the city for the use of some of the equipment that is larger scale that will do more work faster. So thank you.
Yeah, if you maybe water and sun protection, and if you have a favorite garden implement.
Yeah.
Councilor Fleck.
I did not hear any of our unhoused folks recommended for that forum, which I think would be ideal. And I'd like to, thank the folks that came and spoke here. It probably took an awful lot of courage for these folks to come and speak to a body. I know the first time I spoke out there was pretty scary. Of course, that was a lot of years ago. And for folks who've been not necessarily treated the best, I think that actually took a lot of courage. And so if there are folks with the courage to be involved in that process, I'd love to have them at the table as well.
It's on the list.
What's that?
It's on the list.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I just want to thank them very much. I certainly welcome it. I do think it needs to be well facilitated, because I agree this has become such a contentious issue. I think that it needs to be a very open, of course, for dialogue, but it needs to be well regulated so that folks are able to maintain their emotions.
Anyone else? Councilor Dreher.
Mayor, thank you. I have discussed again that we should move councilor comments right after public comment so that those who are here for public comment can hear our response. I'm really grateful that people came from who are living in our homeless camps and shared some of their stories. In particular, what really struck me is as Mr. Bork was sharing his concerns, one of the gentlemen was writing sorry on the board. Like, even they took the courage to come and speak to us. Some of the people in this room have harassed them, flown drones over them, taken pictures of them, and they still come to speak to us and also apologize. But they don't have anything to apologize for other than life has been really difficult for them. So I am cautiously optimistic that a community conversation about homelessness can help heal some of these divides. But as someone who's worked in homeless services and no longer works in homeless services for a reason, because it takes a lot out of you, and it's really hard to have these conversations. So I look forward to them, but I hope the community doesn't see us listening and talking about solutions at a local government level when these are nationwide issues and think, well, why didn't you do anything? Because our hands are often tied by some court rulings, code, land use laws, things like that that are outside of our local government control, and people don't understand that. And certainly I think everybody in this room, if we could do more, we would, although I commend Councilor Merryday and his commitment to actually staying in the camps. I wonder how those folks who came here today would feel about people's seeming disgust that we turned on the water and take out the trash there, or that we want to do dusk to dawn and kick them out every morning. I wonder how those folks who live there would actually think about that. And also September is Emergency Preparedness Month, so I encourage everyone to do what you can to be prepared in case of any natural disaster. The city has some great resources on social media and contests to give you some free stuff if you're following and just get more prepared in case of emergency. That's something that's always concerns me. It makes it seem like I never sleep because I just worry all the time. But if you can stock up on water and food, because in case of the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, we will be on our own for no electricity, a lot of infrastructure will go out. So thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Urban.
So back on, I don't know that we had any agreement on a date or a time to set, but Councilor Stennett was kind enough to send us the link for, was it the conversation?
Humanities? It's Oregon Humanities, I believe.
Oregon Humanities, yeah, the facilitator role.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe a first step would be contacting them, seeing what their availability is, maybe what expenses are involved. And if we can get something on the board there, we can would like to direct staff to reach out to these members, and maybe we can pass a list around just so it's complete, who the stakeholders ought to be. That would seem like the first steps in direction, and then I think there's plenty of sites. The Armory was on the list, something that can host quite a few people in town that want to be there. So that would be my proposal, if it's agreeable to the council. Seeing heads nodding.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything more specific or direction-wise that would be helpful?
Well, certainly we would have to pool dates among the different stakeholders to see where we all could align to make the most in attendance. So,
like a Survey Monkey, or
maybe a poll or something. What dates would be available? Or
could we start a Survey Monkey?
So, yeah, we have Survey Monkey, but we could also use Doodle and do a poll too.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I see none. Business from the city manager.
I have nothing.
Okay. Business from the city attorney.
Hi, thanks for having me. So usually this is blank in the minutes, and I'd like to rectify that at least for this meeting alone. You all were just talking about a really laudable goal about meeting together outside a public meeting context. Well, that segues perfectly with recent legislative amendments that were just passed and go into effect, some at the end of this month, September 24th, some in January. I know that Oregon Government Ethics Commission is trying to get the word out. They sent an email that notified some public officials and definitely city staff of changes to the public meetings laws, but I'm making an effort to try to make sure that my public officials are well aware of these changes. So let's talk really briefly about HB 2805. It amends ORS 192.610. Another amendment amended 192.660 to add 2 new types of executive sessions. That's a bit of an aside. But what I really want you all to be aware of are the changes to codify what previously has been known as Handy versus Lane County. I've provided trainings to you regarding serial meetings, whether it's one of you talking sequentially in person to a quorum of other counselors, or emails, virtual contacts, and electric contacts that ultimately together constitute deliberations or a decision via email. So the legislature took that seriously and has added that to statute. And we now have 2 new definitions. I'm just going to do a little recap. The prior definition, the definitions we've always known. The primary one is a meeting is the convening of a governing body, of a public body for which a quorum is required in order to make a decision or deliberate towards a decision on any matter. We now have 2 new definitions. One is convene, one is deliberate, so to try to put some clarity on that definition of what is a meeting. So House Bill 2805 added those 2 new definitions. The convening lists exactly what you might expect, but now it's in statute. It's a gathering in a physical location of a quorum using electronic video or telephonic technology. I didn't talk enough earlier in this meeting. To communicate contemporaneously among participants using serial electronic written communication among participants, or using an intermediary, so one person going amongst a quorum of you. That could be convening a meeting. And then deliberation is now defined as discussion or communication that is part of a decision-making process. The statute also now tells us what isn't a meeting, what's exempt. So the conveyance of purely factual or educational information, essentially it's facts with no opinion. I don't know about you, but I'm not sure of any conversation that I've ever had where facts are conveyed with no personal impression of what those facts might mean. So I want to caution you, if you think you're having a purely factual conversation, please pause if it involves up to a quorum of you, or a quorum or more of you. If the conversation pertains to city business, but it's nothing that will ever come in front of you, it can't reasonably be foreseen to come in front of this governing body, it could be exempt from the definition of a public meeting. Or, as we knew from Handy, administrative matters, scheduling meetings, talking about leaves of absence if somebody's communicating with you that I'm there. There's 2 other components of this new law. The first is that all seated public officials after January are going to need to take at least a 1-hour training, either virtual or in person, every year, or you could be subjected to a government ethics fine. And Government Ethics Commission has to put together these trainings and make them available to you. But make sure that you take advantage of them. I don't think my trainings qualify, so I think we need to do more in that area. And then the one that bothers me the most, because everything else is pretty much what we would have expected, is that if you recall, Government Ethics Commission has had oversight over executive sessions. So you hold an unlawful executive session or something that goes out of those very narrow boundaries of what is legal to hold executive session out of public purview. Now Government Ethics Commission has jurisdiction over all public meetings violations. So those conversations you're having, those texts you're having either amongst yourselves or whatever that compiled together could constitute a serial meeting, Government Ethics Commission will be reviewing those and deciding whether that individual or those individuals should be subject to up to $1,000 penalties. It used to be that the city would be sued for an unlawful meeting, and then you would show up in circuit court and the city would defend you. Now it's a personal liability to the individual officials. So it makes sense to know about it. I have a summary memo that Richard will distribute. I also have the House bill itself that will be distributed with that memo for you. It's available for public consumption, so it can be posted on the website. And that is all I wanted to say. But I'm here to answer questions if you'd like. And so please be careful at this upcoming community meeting. That is a very city-oriented conversation or a city-oriented event. So be careful who you're seen talking to and what you talk about.
Ms. Conley, when you say intermediate person, does that have to be, can it be a member of the community? Is it just strictly one of us?
It doesn't say.
Okay.
And the interpretation is that it could be, so for instance, staff has in the past polled to just see, is the council interested, usually, and it would be okay for staff to poll to find out, is the council interested in even talking about this issue? We'll schedule it for the next agenda. But sometimes the conversation goes past that. Who's in favor of this particular city action? Let's add it as an action item agenda. Or just I'll move in that direction without official council action. So anyway, that was a long answer to your question. The short answer is it doesn't say, and it just says an intermediary.
And that's brand new.
That's their gloss. That's their gloss from what they think handy meant, or that's what they want handy to stand for.
Councilor Stennett.
Is there any way, in light of what you just told us, that you could kind of unpack, be careful? I mean, it seems fraught with peril to me in an unofficial setting of any kind now.
So what I do want to emphasize is it isn't anything new. I've trained you on these types of conversations to be careful with emails amongst yourselves, texts amongst yourselves, conversations in social settings. There's a lot of four-letter words out there, and city is one of them. Just if you're at an ice cream social, don't talk about city business because you don't know what reasonably is foreseeable to come before the council. So it now is just, that part is in statute. That part, to me, doesn't sound very new. What is new is that instead of somebody perceiving an unlawful public meeting and taking you to circuit court, instead now there's a process. They have to file a complaint with the city. The city has to respond within 21 days and admit, deny, or admit but explain why that wasn't a violation of the public meetings laws, and then send that response and the complaint. The response goes to the complainant. The complaint and the response also goes to GEC. And if GEC thinks there's cause for an investigation, then they can dive into it and investigate. And it may result in personal liability as opposed to city liability.
Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just clarification on that process you're talking about. As it stands now, there's an intermediate step if someone files a complaint that the city gets first swack at refuting it. Mm-hmm. But depending on how they put together the case or refute it or whatever, it will likely be adjudicated on the individual under the Ethics Commission, their own courts or something, or how does that work?
They have it's a board, so the Government Ethics Commission, there's a committee. We've appeared before them on behalf of various public officials, and they will be deciding to direct staff, yes, we'd like to investigate this. One, no, based on what the city's explanation and the complaint itself, that's not a violation of the public meetings laws. I'm not sure how they're going to handle, and I'm not sure if this is going to be used, but I just know that the prior way of resolving public meetings violation has now been modified.
And to Councilor Sennett's question, if I could add a follow-up to it, the be careful part. When we envision a public meeting noticed, what is it that we need to be careful of, that every word heard and spoken is done through a mic, so it can be put on the public, on the virtual display, or what are the
So
guardrails?
public meetings have to be noticed in a manner that is reasonable for your community. There's no set statutory timeline necessarily for regular meetings. Special meetings require 24 hours notice. You probably wouldn't be holding emergency meetings, but sometimes the notice requirement can be waived. They need to be in a publicly accessible venue. You need to have minutes taken. Those are the three primary requirements. They need to be ADA accessible. There's other bells and whistles, but those are the three primary requirements.
So there can be conversations within that meeting. That's not an issue. Like,
for instance, here you usually stick to the agenda, but there could be conversations that come up that are, this is a noticed public meeting, if people are listening, you have a minute taker, and it is in a publicly accessible venue. At an ice cream social, however, if a conversation amongst four of you begins about city business, and now we know what deliberate means, absolutely. So if four of you or more are deliberating, you don't have notice, you don't have public access, you don't have a minute taker. So that's what, all of those things are a problem. So you just don't want to talk outside the context of a noticed public meeting.
With a quorum.
Well, see, but that's the problem, isn't it? Now, serial meetings are also codified. So if you wouldn't want to have two of you talking about something, saying, and I also spoke with Mayor Solsby, and I'm planning to talk with Councilor Meriday. That's a serial meeting, even because you have an intermediary. Or the classic Facebook posts where everybody's chiming in because you know more about the city than some regular constituents, and you want to make sure that everybody has the right facts. But when multiple of you are communicating on a social media platform, that would be an unlawful public meeting. Even though it's Facebook and even though the public can access it, it's not noticed. So those are the situations to be mostly careful around.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor Soulsby. Just to clarify, because I think this community conversation around the unhoused is really important. As long as it is noticed, as long as there's minutes being taken, we can have these really important conversations. Is that correct? As
Absolutely.
long as we follow okay. Because I think that's really important, and I don't want to discourage us, but we do need to follow protocol.
Interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because what I was trying to parse in my mind when I heard the prior conversation of their stakeholders, my understanding is that isn't a city endeavor. It is a community endeavor, and maybe you're going to have a city representative on it. If you're going to have more than a quorum of the council there, we might want to rethink how those meetings are being held. We may want to instead have one counselor be present and actually communicating with those stakeholders, and others of you could be present either virtually or not in the room, or in the room and not communicating. There's ways to structure things so that you're not invoking the public meetings laws, but I thought this was an incredibly perfect opportunity to talk about how to avoid holding unlawful public meetings.
So if I might, one more scenario, that makes me curious about our street ad hoc committee meeting, because we have, you know, all 7 of us could potentially end up there, and it's often 4 or 5 of us. Should that continue? I mean, I believe that they're public notice. I believe anybody can attend. I believe we have minutes being taken. They're recorded. That one seems fine as well. Is that correct?
I'm seeing the city manager nod, and so one of the major points I want to emphasize is just if you have questions about any kind of convening, just ask in advance, ask staff or myself to make sure, is this a public meeting? Did we notice it properly? And then after that, you can feel really comfortable about attending and participating.
Thank you.
All right. No more discussion? Okay. All right. Items removed from the consent agenda. So it looks like we are going to go ahead and recess this meeting and move into our executive session. So we'll ask that members of the public. The City Council for Cottage Grove will now meet in executive session to consult with staff designated to negotiate real property transactions. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.660E, which allows the council to meet in executive session to deliberate with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session, and at the end of executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. So I've asked the audience to leave, and
And for those that are on the virtual portion of the meeting, we'll ask you to leave at this time, and once we've cleared the room, except for Councilor Savage, we'll lock the room, and you can come back on, but you won't be able to get in until we unlock it.
One final point. My mistake, I didn't catch that it's 2E. It's 192.660.2E. So, Mindy, for future, yeah.
so we're in recess.
So if everybody online can leave so we can lock the meeting, and then you can come back on and you'll have a blank space until we approve you to come back. And Kate, if you can come back too, and then we'll get you fixed after the executive session to be able to get on.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You can go ahead and
Ready
get
for
started.
us? Great.
We sure?
Mayor and Council, I really appreciate and applaud your trust and confidence in GMP and specifically in our group to do this search. We're delighted to be here. With me is on Zoom or on the video is Kate Hansen. I introduced her to her last meeting. She was here with me. And she'll be going over some of the scope of the work as well on the agenda that we have to go over with you folks. Great. The other members of our team will be Brenda Gavitas as well as Sarah Marsh. They'll be working in tandem with us behind the scenes mostly, but helping to develop the profile and doing scheduling work, so on and so forth. So I wanted to go over, first of all, the recruitment schedule, which I'll ask Kate Hansen to speak to you about. Go ahead, Kate.
All right, thank you so much. And I don't know, do I have ability to screen share at all?
I think that option was going to be provided.
Let me check here. I'm just taking a look at my settings here. Just a moment. Sorry about that.
You should be able to hit the share icon.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, it seems like it wants me to. Sorry, I just have to turn the right preferences on. All right. Looks like it's telling me it wants to restart in order to share. So I may not. It may not let me do that, but I can certainly go through this verbally here if that works for folks.
Go ahead, Kate.
So as we go through our search schedule, we have a general timeline that we work through for the search process as a whole. It's usually approximately 13 weeks. So the first phase of that is this kickoff meeting here starting out, and then we go into our profile development, and we usually plan 2 weeks at least for that turnaround time. That gives us time to Bob will do meetings with key stakeholders, and we will give you folks time to collect the profile information that we need from your end about the city, about the position, and get that over to our content designer so that we can get a draft all put together for your review and approval. Then we will go into the advertising for the position, which would be week 3 of the search. That's when we will send our direct mailing out, post online ads, and push that out to our network as well. We usually plan to have that open for about 4 weeks so that we can have time for that word to get out and folks can apply for that position. And then the next phase we go into is our first review, which would be starting in week 8. And Bob will be screening applicants that we have and selecting those to move forward as semi-finalists. And he will conduct semi-final interviews virtually with those candidates. Hopefully we'll get enough that we'll have about 10 to 12 is the hope for conducting those interviews as semi-finalists. And we will put together packets for each of those, and then we will do what we call a work session with you folks where Bob will go through all of those semi-finalists with you, and we'll need to set a time for that. That will, the timeline, occur at week 10, and you will review all the semi-finalists and choose which candidates you would like to move forward as finalists. And then we will also go over at that time the details regarding the final interviews. So what you would like to have included in that, how many panels you would like to have, if you would like to have any kind of community reception or other communal opportunities during that, any tour for the candidates. All of those details can be decided at that work session. And then we give ourselves a 2-week turnaround to conduct the background checks, work with you to get all those logistics pulled together for those interviews, get a schedule out to the candidates as well as the panelists that will be involved. And then in week 13, post the interviews, and then you folks will get to select a hiree. So that's kind of the overall timeline of the process. How quickly that starts depends on how quickly you folks want to move, and certainly if there are areas in there where we need to kind of adjust our timeline, we can. Those main points in there, for sure, the stakeholder interviews up front. I know you folks have previously talked about definitely wanting to have community engagement in there, so having that as a part of that for sure. And then that work session after the first review will be a place where we'll need to get a meeting on the calendar with the whole council, and then of course participation in those final interviews. So those will kind of be the key points in time when we're going to be needing to figure out schedules as far as what works for you folks and needing some more time and in-person participation at those points.
Thanks, Kate. A little bit more detail on that profile development. We're going to be obviously collecting data, so we'll be working with the city recorder directly, and anything we give through to you folks will be for the mayor and council. So if I have any dialogue, if I get any emails from a mayor or from the mayor or the council members, I will obviously return that to each of you so that everybody has an understanding of what's going on. There will be complete transparency on the data sharing, on the communications, so on and so forth. So everybody has an understanding of how that will work. Any questions about that, I can answer now.
Just a comment that we need to not reply.
That's correct.
So that's that serial meeting worry. So
Yes.
So I love the information. We just can't reply.
That's
Is that
correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if there's any inquiries, it'll be general nature. It won't be asking questions about decision-making processes. Obviously, those will be obviously up front for you folks to make in a well-called regular session if it has to be done. So.
Councilor Merida.
Thank you, Mayor. So you're saying that we could all give you input, or do you would rather have it funneled through the mayor or a spokesman?
Well, through the city recorder.
Oh, through the
city recorder, yes.
Okay. I missed that part.
Thank you. Yes, that would be preferable. That way, she obviously can then gather it. She can, obviously make sure that you folks are getting copies back as well. Mm-hmm. If I try to do that, there's a possibility that it won't get to everyone, only because sometimes have glitches with email systems. So if I get it to the city recorder, that way it gets into your system and then through to you folks regularly on your own devices.
So thank you for that clarification.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I just had a quick question about your timeline. You mentioned it was a 13-week timeline, and week 10 would potentially be our work session. And if we were to go as of today, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 10 weeks out is about Thanksgiving. 13 weeks out is like the first or second week of December. Is that what you're proposing? That's doable?
There's a couple of factors in play here. One I'll mention it a little bit later, but Kate mentioned at the end of her comments, this community forum. In order to get it noticed properly and to provide everyone ample time to plan for it, I think the earliest you'd want to have that is roughly around the week of September 25th. So maybe later in the week, maybe the 27th or 28th would be ideal. That's it's only a little bit over 2 weeks away, but having it next week would be very difficult. I know you have your community celebrations going on. And but by then, I should have all the interviews with individual meetings with the mayor and each council member. I should have all of the staff meetings taken care of as far as interviewing on the profile. If you want me to interview, I think you should, and I'll recommend your board and commission and committee chairs. I'll do them as a group. And then if you have any other key community stakeholders, I'll call them leaders of the community, folks in the Chamber of Commerce, the Superintendent's Office, anything else that you have out there like that folks that are regularly participating at that higher level of the community. And then there's the community forum. But by the time we have the community forum, I should have all the other work done, and then we'll have the community forum. We'll get more input, obviously, from your residents and other interested parties in the community, and I can wrap that up fairly quickly. By early October, we could have the profile back to you for review and approval, and then we'll go from there. So that first 2 to 3 weeks is going to be tight, but I think we can get it done. Then we're going to roll. Yes, we're going to roll into the holidays, and there's a upcoming election here, I believe, and so there's going to be some complications, but we'll have to work around those. Ideally, you wouldn't want to have anybody concerning themselves with transitioning over the holidays, but in this particular case, if we can get the interviews done and we get the council and mayor selecting a primary candidate, come to terms and agreement, we could do that perhaps in early December, and then it could roll over probably sometime into January. Does that make sense? We have almost 3 full months to early December, so that's about 13 weeks. It can be done. It's just that we have to obviously adhere to that calendar and schedule.
Councilor Stennett.
So thank you. It sounds like you're envisioning and proposing a lot of contact early on, stakeholders, with the interested parties in developing the proposal. Are we worried about, we understand the earnestness of this, and that other people may not, that we may not get people motivated in a
Right. What I normally would do with the individual mayor and council members, we'll set those up immediately. I'll need to get names and phone numbers and so on and so forth, but I'll work with the city recorder to get that done, to find out what your schedules are like. I can do interviews in the evenings. I can do them on weekends with you folks for your staff and your community stakeholders and these other groups. For instance, the board, committee, and commission chairs, I can do those as a group too. We'll offer 2 different times for each of those groups. Different days of the week, different times. That way they can participate on one of those 2 panels, or they can also, we'll send out an email to them and we'll explain to them what we'd like to have them do if they want to fill it out and return it to me directly. What we're looking for in all of this, and it might seem like a lot of information, and again it could be, is that we're looking for commonalities. We're looking for a consensus of what the ideal candidate traits would be. We're looking for, why would a person want to apply for and come to your city or to Cottage Grove and live here and work here? What are some of the opportunities and challenges? We'll hope we can define that in about 5 or 6 different statements. And then we also want to find out what the culture and what's the leadership style of the mayor and council. And that'll come primarily from you folks, but also from observation from others. So we'll have a pretty good idea. And usually I end up with pages of notes, and then I carefully go through that and look for common, I'll call intersections of thoughts. And so we can't use all of those we can't put them all into a 5 or 6 page profile, but we try to get what I think are the common elements. And it usually turns out really well, and you'll be able to see that.
So it sounds like you're trying to provide a more concrete opportunity. Either join us on one of these dates or provide your testimony written.
Yes.
As opposed to, please call us when you can.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, we want to have it structured as much as possible. That way you folks have the ability to do it at your convenience too.
So Bob, what you're asking from us right now is to come up with the names of the chairs of the commissions and committees in town and get that to you.
Yes, again, but the prerogative is on the mayor and council. Do you want to do those things? I'm recommending them, and I think it serves for a better process. But it's not my decision. I want to make sure that's clear. You have that, obviously, that ability to make that decision.
I think it would be good. We're all in agreement? Mm-hmm.
Yes, the more robust that we can get public input from all levels, the more successful I believe our efforts will be.
Especially in this case, when you've had a long tenured city manager, most folks can't recall the last time you went through a process. I think it's very important to bring it up to that scale and that level. I think it'll speak volumes for your community to allow that opportunity.
Ms. Roberts, do you have a list of all the chairs of all the Chamber of Commerce, downtown?
I don't have them all in one spot, but I believe it's information if council can direct me specifically as to what organizations that you're interested in, then I certainly can gather that information and get it to you.
Sure.
Okay. Councilor Urban.
Could I suggest that you gather what you can, put the list out to us, and we can fill in gaps?
I could do that, yeah.
Fantastic.
I'll work with the recorder as well, give her some ideas of what those groups would be like, also based on our other search that we've done. You know most of the groups in town here who are participating. There's a number of them, I'm sure, so that key constituents.
Councilor Fleck?
Did I understand you were hoping to interview us next week?
It could be this week or next week.
So I'm elk hunting next week, so
Okay.
if you can catch me this week would be awesome.
I'm going to make every effort to hit the ground running tomorrow, actually. So,
All our contact information is on the website.
okay. What I'll ask to do, though, is put a matrix together so that I have the different groups. I have the mayor and council. I have the staff members' names with their email addresses and phone numbers. I have what I'll call the board, committee, and commission chair, their names and information. And then the fourth group would be that community group as well. It makes it a better process for us if I have to follow up with anyone. And also, I get to know the people's names. And then when I see them come into the meetings, or if they share information with me, I know who they're from as well. That way we can keep them sorted, and I know which groups I got to perhaps put more emphasis on to make sure I get information from them as well. So we've done that with other searches. That's about the best way that I can suggest doing this. Otherwise, we're going to end up spending a lot more time trying to arrange for meetings and coordinate. So I'll work with the recorder.
Mindy?
Thank you. I'll get together with her as soon as she's available this week.
Great. Is there anything else that you need from us, Bob?
No, I just wanted to mention the community forum, if I can go into a little bit of detail on that. I did scope out the Armory. I think it's an excellent spot to do this. It's got quite a bit of room, depending on what you have there, but we'll anticipate a larger group. and I'll set that up with your staff, and we'll get it ready. I'm proposing September 28th. I mentioned to your city manager today that we'll need to work with your staff to help promote and advertise for this, as well as help set up the room in an orderly fashion. We'll probably most likely use round tables, so on and so forth. Pretty straightforward stuff. But I'll work with staff on that one, if that's okay with the council. As far as your participation, it would be nice if you can attend, but I'd ask you to not participate. We would obviously want to make sure this is a stakeholder meeting that's residents only, and then they get an opportunity that way. Otherwise, there's a tendency for council to want to help insist. But I will need table, I'll call them table leaders, somebody at each of the tables. And I'd ask that if you know of any group that could help with this, it's pretty simple. They're going to be taking notes. They're going to be recording responses. And each table will be a separate group of people. And then at the end of the night, we'll bring that all information back and form some type of consensus out of the entire group. And I can just take that back with me for the profile development.
Councilor Stennett?
I was wondering if you could give us a little more detail on the roundtable to get something this focused accomplished with a large group of people. The other question is, can we ask someone like a high school key club, perhaps, or someone to be these helpers? I think it'd be a great way to get them involved in the process. And
yes,
I don't know.
Yes, and yes. Any group you can think of that could participate would be. I'm expecting no more than say 60 to 90 minutes. It shouldn't take long to get this organized well and get in. Because I only spend about 35 to 45 minutes with each of you sometimes, and then with obviously the other groups I'll spend up to an hour. So I don't want to spend too long and pull people back in these community meetings as well. But it could take a little bit longer. But I can just give you some more idea about what it would look like. I'm going to be asking them the same questions in a little different manner. I've got to start. I'll call the dynamic of starting explaining what's going on, and so to get them to engage, and then start talking about the types of things that we're going to want to elicit from them. Because this is going to be new to them, and they're not really familiar with any of this stuff. I wouldn't expect them to be. They've never been involved, as far as I can tell, with the type of recruitment that we're looking at.
How are you planning on advertising this? Are you going to put it out on social media?
Whatever staff can help me with, yes. Social media, your website, get it out to all your service clubs, the Chamber of Commerce, anybody you can think of that could help promote this with their own memberships, the school district, whoever it might be. You want as much participation as possible, more the better.
Mayor, you're proposing the 28th, which is a Thursday, and like what time? I'm concerned there might not be great turnout on a Thursday evening versus I don't know what's going on at the Armory on Saturday the 30th when there's farmers market and people are already going to be in that area. We could get greater turnout perhaps on a Saturday morning.
I'll leave it to you folks. I always find that people's weekends seem to be precious. But as far as their time, I was thinking it'd be earlier evening. It would be 6:30 to about no later than 8 o'clock would be expectations.
We'd want to look at the community calendar and make sure there aren't any conflicts. I know business after hours is typically on a Thursday, although it seems like it's the third.
The week before.
Yeah, so it does seem like the week before, but I want to make sure that we don't conflicting with some other community event.
Councilor Savage?
Thank you so much. The 28th does concern me. I think it's really important that the Chamber of Commerce have a seat at the table, and there is a ribbon cutting at 5:30 that evening, and this would conflict with that. So I would propose either that Tuesday or Wednesday. And then also, as far as folks who are kind of moderating the tables, maybe that is part of the stakeholder meetings that you have, and you can also grab some of the stakeholders to moderate that. I would make sure to grab a diverse group of folks that could help put input from all sides.
I actually did talk to Georgia about the 28th, and she thought that they could pull it off, but you might want to talk to her as well.
27th is the street committee.
ad hoc.
Mhm.
27th is.
So I'll just quickly go over some of the questions I'll be asking of the participants at the community forum. What do you treasure about Cottage Grove? It would be one item from each participant at each table, that type of stuff. What makes it difficult for you to want to live here? Or what makes it difficult to live here? What change would you like to see? And then thinking about the conversation we just had, those three items, what attributes or assets would you like to see in a new city manager? And how could that person help towards some of those things that you're most interested about Cottage Grove? And then within each table, we'll ask them to rank the top three attributes or assets. And then the key here is that we want folks to come who would not normally be represented, who should be there. So we really have the other folks covered. The staff will be covered. The board committee and commissions will be covered by their chair. They can meet prior to that and talk about some of these things, as well as your key constituent groups and from the community. If it's a chamber, if it's a Rotary Club, whoever else might be participating, I hope they would come supply with some information from some of their own membership about these things. Does that help?
It does.
Okay.
Is there a way to encourage them to do that ahead of time?
Yes.
So invite them and
I'll be sending an email through Mindy that she can get it distributed. Yes. Yeah. I want to explain what the process would be. Again, it's so new that they're going to be wondering why we're being asked these questions. So, but most of them understand that there's going to be a change in leadership here. If they haven't heard about it already, they will be hearing about it, I'm sure, shortly. So. Good.
I'm always concerned about showing hospitality when there's large groups and when the community's involved. So I just state that my hope and desire would be that we extend that to stakeholders if we're going to meet for round tables. Just make sure that we exercise good hospitality. Be conscious of the time.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Any questions about that item 4 that we've talked about? Otherwise, I'm going to go to item 5. Quickly, just briefly, the recruitment strategy. We're looking at a target audience, and we're recommending that, given the size of your community, that the audience would be city managers or city administrators or department directors that and or assistant city managers or assistant city administrators from populations up to approximately 15,000 people. And it's an arbitrary number, I understand, but you're looking at an audience, you're looking at obviously what I would term to be rising stars in these communities that have already had experience. If you have other ideas about who you'd like to also have me target, we sometimes do have what I'll call non-traditional candidates that have great leadership skills that we could also target as well. That we can we look at we have those applications that come in. We can certainly take a look at those as well. But as we get these. We start gathering. I'll obviously talk to the mayor and council more about what you're looking for exactly there, based on the profile that's going to be developed. So. And then the advertising. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm really sorry. I forgot. I made some notes and I forgot to reference them about when we're still on the community process. About is there a way to include like an online community survey component prior to the meeting?
Might be a little bit more challenging given the amount of time you might have. The other possibility, though, is to provide those same sets of questions that I'll be providing to the other 3 groups, as well as you can put it out there you can post it on your Facebook or send it out your email list that you might have, and just say if you're not able to participate in the community meeting, here are the questions that we're asking the other groups, including the mayor and council. If you'd like to respond directly back to the consultant, they can send it to me. They can fill it out. That'd be fine too. I don't mind that at all.
So they can kind of ponder and not get blindsided when they show up.
They can look at it that way as well as in preparation, or they can also just send it back to me directly if they can't participate at the community forum as well. That'd be fine.
Sorry.
No, thank you. I forgot to mention that too. We typically, given the complexity of the region that we live in, we look at the 14 western states as well as the Midwest. And we can certainly look at, it'll be posted on a national website. It's called the International City Management Association. and they have 5 or 6 subgroups of that. So there'll be a fairly large audience looking at this in the advertising. But I didn't know if you wanted me to, for us to concentrate on, I'll call more regional candidates, or if you want me to look at the broader market and see what you pick up on. Some city councils have a preference. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to even think about that. But,
Broad.
yeah, it's an attractive community. It's an attractive area. So good. I would recommend that. So. We already have our primary liaison. Thank you for Mindy for volunteering. And then the last piece I have under other issues and questions is the interim city manager. And we recommend that it should be an external person who is not interested in the permanent or regular full-time position, or who might become interested as the process goes on. I don't want to dwell too much on this, but in a couple of the searches we had where we had an interim city manager that was named from the staff who said they were not interested in the regular position. About halfway through the process, they decided that, hey, this is pretty attractive, and I think I'd be a good candidate for it. And so it can upset the entire process. You will inevitably, any candidate you have up to that point will see that, and they would probably change their mind about wanting to continue the process. So that's what we would recommend, is have an external interim manager. Unless you have somebody who clearly is not interested in the position, a regular full-time, and clearly has the ability, the skill, the leadership qualities to be the interim city manager.
Councilor Stone?
I just seem like it would be tough to read minds. Kind of ascertain ahead of time if that might happen with someone that we, if they do become interested later on, I don't know how we guard against that. We want the most competent person to do those things.
Mayor, if I may, I think we're in a unique situation where we have an assistant city manager. That's the job already, is to fill in, and he's publicly stated he's not interested in the position. As Councilor Stinnett said, you can't foresee the future that he would change his mind, but I think he probably wouldn't be very competitive in the future because he already said he wasn't going to do that. I think I'm also concerned about staff having to spend more time onboarding an interim when we're just trying to do our work anyway. So I think we already have somebody who could be the interim, and this looks like a pretty swift process. I would think that Jake Boone could do it.
Councilor Black?
So, and I agree with Councilor Dreer, but also I really like the idea of an external candidate. But could we, in the next 2 weeks, come up with a interim pool, or at least someone we think would be a good fill for the next, 2 months or more?
Only in anticipation of this possibly going that route, our president, Greg Prothman, is working right now on looking at viable candidates who might be interested in interviewing, just a brief interview with mayor and council about being the interim city manager. It's no obligation, but we are anticipating if you wanted to go that route, we are going to be prepared to present you with candidates for your consideration. The other piece that you want to remember, at least take heed, is that if you have an internal person who could do the job, do they have the capacity? Meaning, are other work going to go idle, or is it going to be suffering because of that? Usually the person that you're naming internally already has a role, probably has a full plate already, given your staffing levels and your needs. But it's really dependent upon what the mayor and council want to do at that point. It's your decision to make.
Councilor Irvin?
Thank you, Mayor. What do you see these interim positions budget-wise when you're looking at them? I mean, this seems like a quite transitory position. Maybe you're talking about 4 months, maybe less.
It'd be the duration from the time your current city manager would leave until you'd actually have somebody else come on board. So you have roughly 4 months. The budget itself, I know working with Greg Prothman that he tries not to exceed what you're ready would be paying your regular employee for that. So he would take a look at the total compensation and then try to work out a contract. Obviously, that wouldn't require anything further or in addition to that. but I can't really speak to the actual numbers. But it's been a pretty fair process. We've placed interims managers in a couple of different cities now in the last year, and I felt the mayor and council were satisfied with the process and satisfied with the payment they had to make.
So, the balance to this is someone's going to presumably come up to speed. It's hard for me to gauge how quickly that happens. We're talking about the detriment of someone internal being the workload, but training is a workload. Are you seeing that this is something that doesn't require training, doesn't pull from other staff time when you hire from the outside?
Perhaps give the best example would be me. I took on an interim role last summer up in Newcastle, Washington, and I got previous city manager experience, so the ramp-up time was immediate. I was able to really calm the water more than anything else. Put my hand on the switch, keep it firm and steady, and not make any what I'll call drastic decisions. You don't want the interim person to make decisions unless they absolutely have to. Their role is really to make sure that things keep moving forward, that they're working with the mayor and council, making sure the projects are getting done, obviously providing support and mentorship and guidance to the staff, and not taking on anything unreasonably new unless they absolutely have to. But those folks will be prepared to do that. They're typically going to be former city managers who have great experience, have been in the business for, they're usually retired by now, obviously. They could be in transition as well, but you don't necessarily want that person to be someone who's interested in the position, and they won't be interested in the position. But they offer a steady hand. We did the same in Montlake Terrace, where I was the lead consultant. We had another former city manager who took the leadership role, worked out quite well. It allowed staff to focus on their main responsibilities, and they had a lot of work going on, I think similar to what's going on here in Cottage Grove. You've got a lot of responsibilities to take care of. You got a lot of projects that are happening. You're preparing for, I don't know if you got the budget upcoming now, but you're going to be doing things that are going to be extraordinary going into the winter season. It's just a number of things you want to have focused on. It's usually difficult to have a staff person who's got that extra capacity to do that. And, that's why we were recommending it that way. But there shouldn't be a lot of uptime at all. If you've got, we wouldn't recommend somebody like that for starters, I suppose. But you're also going to be looking at someone who's got at least a couple decades of experience of city management, and they know their way around quite well.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I think if we had another couple of weeks for onboarding and potentially shadowing our current city manager before he goes, I'd be leaning more towards an external candidate. To comment on potential internal candidate, if somebody were to switch and say, I really don't want to have this position, I could be interim, and then halfway through go, actually, I'm going to apply, that's also a reflection of character. And as the seven of us, we can see through that. And that doesn't look good either. So we are in charge of that role as the seven of us. And if that's not what we're looking for, then that's not what's going to happen. So, I think it's a win-win. Because it's a definite amount, it's not a long term. It's a finite amount. In order to expedite the process, we've got 13 weeks here. We can just hit the ground running and start interviewing people and get somebody hired in January. We use Jake Boone.
Councilor Flack.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments. It's not about whether we would entertain that position or not. It's about the perception of our candidate pool. And for me, I think, having somebody external that's, a consultant, it's very clear that person is not going to apply for the position. And I think that sends a very strong message to potential candidates that, this person is not, cherry picked as the favorite and we're just going through an exercise, to show that that's the person we want. And so I would really, if we can do it in the next 2 weeks, I would really encourage us to get somebody external. And that gives all of our department heads the opportunity to work with that person to get them up to speed. I agree. We've done this in the past. Other cities have had, LCOG has done this in the past where they've, had administrators come in. Obviously it's going to be a bumpy process no matter what we do. And then when we get a new city manager, they're going to have some, time getting used to our community. So, I mean, I don't foresee that being a problem. I see the real benefit though is our candidate pool.
All right. Anyone else? Councilor Merida.
So just so I understand the current amount budgeted for the city manager's salary would pay for the interim, or this would be an addition to?
I don't know how you got it structured internally, but I don't know what kind of terminal payments will be made to the city manager, but we would not expect to exceed what you're currently paying the city manager as far as a total salary and benefits. We would take that amount, if you will, and look at that, and then obviously we would factor in an hourly rate based on that.
But as far as our city budget goes, his salary is budgeted for a year. And
right.
At the point he retires, that money is still available, and we could use that money.
If that's how you've got it structured, yes. Mm-hmm.
It's not going to cost us extra.
Not in salary and benefits, no.
Okay.
I should have your finance director answer that question, not me. Just assuming.
He's unavailable at the moment.
What did you mean by terminal benefits?
If there's any terminal, like you pay out vacation that's unused, that type of stuff. Yeah, that's a separate compensation. It should not be part of the salary and benefits, but it's.
So we'd be talking about, I forget what the date is actually, October, is it 26, 28?
I think it's coming up in September.
City manager's last day?
29th.
September 29th.
28th?
9th.
29th? Okay. So we'd be talking about getting someone hired, as of October 1st for the duration of the interview selection process. Okay, so I would support an external under these conditions.
Just have a question of council and the mayor. Do you think that this should be by motion or by consensus as far as how to move forward with the interim?
I think we'd need a motion to actually appoint the interim, but I think if we have consensus, and I think, well, unless somebody, I guess it's up to a council member if they dissent to make that clear, and then we can make a vote.
I think we're all in agreement.
Seems cleaner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So to reiterate, we are in favor of an external candidate, and you'll tell us what that process can look like. How we get an external interim city manager.
Yes, that'll be Greg Prothman, our president. He'll be working directly with the mayor and council on that, as well as the whoever from staff will be designated for the liaison role. Yes. Mm-hmm. He's, like I mentioned, we were discussing that already today, and he'll be working on it promptly again tomorrow, identifying candidates to come in. I presume, now I don't speak for Greg, but he'll offer up at least a couple of candidates, if not three, for your consideration. And if you want to interview those folks, he might also recommend one of those folks directly to you. It can be direct placement, or you can go through an interview process if you prefer to do that as well. It'd be a pretty short process, but all the same, it's going to be the mayor and council's decision.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Great. That's all I had, Mayor and Council. Again, it's a pleasure, and we'll be starting promptly tomorrow morning.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So, doesn't look like we have anything else.
Thanks, Kate.
Council's adjourned.